I watched him from across the street that night. My husband, the billionaire, the man who once made me feel like a queen, was kneeling in rags, his hands stretched out, begging for coins. And beside him, holding a plastic cup and wearing the same hollow look of hunger, was the young beggar girl he had betrayed me with. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I smiled. Because everything they were suffering now, I had planned for it. People used to say I had it all. I was the wife of a billionaire, living in a mansion with marble floors that shone like mirrors, chandeliers that sparkled like falling stars, closets filled with gowns I rarely wore, because every day was already a performance. To outsiders, our life looked like a fairy tale. Gala dinners, charity balls, vacations on private islands, helicopters waiting to fly us anywhere we wanted. And my husband, Richard, he was always the center of attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of smile that could convince anyone to sign a contract or fall in love. He knew how to command a room, and he enjoyed it. At first, I thought he loved me. In the early years, he did everything a dream husband would do. Roses on the table every morning, surprise trips to Paris just for lunch. Diamonds slipped into my palm like secrets. But what glittered on the surface slowly began to rot underneath. It began subtly. The way his phone was always face down, the sudden business meetings that dragged into the night, the perfume that lingered on his suits, a scent I didn't wear. I asked him once, gently, if something was wrong. He kissed my forehead and said, "Darling, you worry too much. You have everything. Isn't that enough?" Enough. That word stung, because he didn't ask if I was happy. He didn't even look me in the eyes when he said it. The truth revealed itself one afternoon when I went into the city. I was in the back of our black limousine, the tinted glass shielding me from the world, when traffic stopped near a busy intersection. That's when I saw her. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, standing barefoot on the corner. Her hair was messy, her clothes ragged, but her face was startlingly beautiful. Large, striking eyes, delicate cheekbones, lips that seemed too perfect for a life of poverty. She was begging, holding out her hand to strangers who mostly ignored her. And then I saw him. Richard, my husband, my billionaire husband, was standing right there beside her, not just giving her money, but whispering to her, smiling in that intimate way I hadn't seen in years. I froze. It was as if the world outside that tinted glass became a cruel play, and I was forced to watch. He leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and she laughed. A laugh that was both shy and trusting. In that moment, I realized this wasn't charity. This wasn't pity. This was betrayal. That night, when he came home, I didn't mention what I had seen. I could smell her perfume on him, faint but undeniable. He kissed my cheek distracted and mumbled something about being tired. And I smiled. I said nothing, because for the first time I understood something very clearly. Revenge is not about shouting. It is about patience. From that day forward, I started to play my own role, the perfect wife, calm, trusting, obedient. He believed me. He believed in his own cleverness, his ability to deceive. But behind my silence, I watched. I gathered details: where he went, who he called, how much money disappeared from his accounts. I even hired someone, quietly, discreetly, to follow him when I couldn't. And the reports confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't just seeing her occasionally, he was spending vast amounts of money on her. Expensive clothes, jewelry, even paying for an apartment in her name. A beggar girl transformed into a kept woman. But he didn't stop there. He told her things he never told me, whispered promises of leaving me, of giving her the life she deserved. You're a YouTube storyteller with a friendly, engaging voice that's easy to listen to. I could have confronted him. I could have screamed, broken things, filed for divorce, and taken half his fortune. But that would have been too easy for him, too merciful. Instead, I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to know what it felt like to lose everything, not just money or status, but dignity. And so I began to prepare. Richard had always underestimated me. He thought of me as the beautiful wife who hosted parties, smiled for the cameras, and spent money on gowns. He forgot that before I married him, I was sharp, strategic, capable. While he played with his mistress, I studied our finances. Most of the wealth, ironically, was under my name, thanks to tax maneuvers his lawyers once advised. The companies, the properties, the shares. He thought it made me look like a decorative partner. He never realized it also gave me power. Power I was ready to use. But here's the part that still haunts me. As I dug deeper into the girl's background, I discovered something shocking. She really had been a beggar, abandoned as a child, living on the streets. Her beauty was both her curse and her weapon. Men gave her money not out of pity, but desire. And Richard, my husband, was just the wealthiest fool to fall for her. But she wasn't stupid. She played him like a violin. And I decided that if she wanted to use him, I would use her too. In the weeks that followed, Richard became bolder. He stopped pretending to love me. He stopped making excuses. Sometimes he didn't even come home at night. His suit smelled of cheap perfume mixed with expensive whiskey. His smile became careless, his arrogance unchecked. He believed he was untouchable. He believed that no matter what he did, I would remain his loyal wife. And why wouldn't he? I played the part perfectly. Dinner on the table, a kiss on the cheek, a smile at social events. Not a single tear or word of suspicion. But every time I set the table for two and he didn't show up, every time I slipped into an empty bed and smelled a stranger's scent on his pillow, the fire inside me grew. That beggar girl, her image burned into my mind. I saw her everywhere, in the reflection of store windows, in the shadows of alleys, and the eyes of women passing by. Sometimes I wondered, was she better than me? Younger, yes. More beautiful, perhaps. More desperate, certainly. But what unsettled me most was the thought that maybe she offered him something I no longer could. Not wealth, not luxury, not power, but adoration. That pure, almost foolish worship of a girl who believes a man is her savior. And Richard, with his endless ego, craved that more than anything. One evening, as I dressed for a charity gala, Richard entered the room. He looked at me in my emerald gown, my diamonds sparkling under the light, and he smirked. "You look beautiful,"
he said, his tone flat, like a man commenting on a painting he'd grown bored of. I forced a smile. "And you look tired, darling. Another late meeting?" His jaw tightened. He hated when I hinted at his lies, even softly, but he said nothing. He simply adjusted his tie and walked out. That was the moment I realized the man who once kissed the ground I walked on no longer saw me as a woman. To him, I was furniture, a status symbol, a throne he sat on but never admired, and he thought I was too weak to do anything about it. But weakness was an illusion. While he wasted nights with her, I built alliances, lawyers, accountants, trusted friends in places he never bothered to look. I created a shadow map of our empire, the companies, the properties, the hidden investments, and slowly, quietly, I shifted control. Papers signed, assets moved, trust funds restructured. Richard was too distracted to notice, too busy chasing a girl who pretended to worship him. And that's when I discovered something else. His empire wasn't as invincible as it seemed. He was reckless, over-leveraged, gambling with investments that only looked profitable on the surface. Without me, without my careful management, the entire house of cards could collapse. And I held all the cards. The cracks in Richard's empire began as whispers, a deal falling through here, a business partner growing impatient there. At first, he brushed them off. "Just a minor setback," he'd say, waving his hand as though millions meant nothing. But I knew better, because I was the one pulling the threads. Every signature he scribbled, every document he neglected to read, brought him closer to collapse. And still, he thought he was untouchable. One evening, Richard hosted a dinner with investors at our mansion. The air was thick with cigars and the clinking of crystal glasses. He stood tall at the head of the table, boasting about new ventures, promising profits that didn't exist. I sat at his side, smiling politely, pouring wine. But behind my smile, I had already ensured the numbers would betray him. The reports he bragged about were falsified by his own carelessness and my careful manipulation. When the investors left, their faces tight with suspicion, I saw the first flicker of fear in his eyes. Days later, headlines began to spread. Billionaire's deals questioned. Financial empire on the verge of collapse. Richard stormed into my room, rage boiling in his voice. "Who's leaking this information? Who's sabotaging me?" I looked up from my book calmly. "Maybe you should pay more attention to the people you trust." He didn't realize that the person he trusted most, his own wife, was the saboteur. Meanwhile, his mistress, the beggar girl turned queen, grew restless. She wanted more. More jewels, more apartments. Promises weren't enough anymore. Through my investigator, I learned she had begun pressuring him to leave me, to give her my place, to crown her the wife of a billionaire. And Richard, foolish and desperate for her affection, began to consider it. But his timing was cursed, because by then he was already losing everything. One morning, Richard's bank called. Accounts were frozen. He stormed into his office, shouting at assistants, blaming everyone but himself. I watched from the doorway, my face a mask of concern. "Is everything all right, darling?" I asked softly. "Nothing I can't fix," he snapped, slamming the phone down. But that night, he didn't sleep. He paced the floor, sweating, muttering numbers to himself. The empire he thought indestructible was crumbling brick by brick. And then came the cruelest twist of all.
When Richard's gift slowed, the beggar girl turned cold. She mocked him, laughed at his bad luck, threatened to leave unless he gave her more. I knew this because I had arranged for her to meet someone else, someone who whispered lies into her ear, feeding her greed, convincing her that Richard's fortune was fading. The same greed that once lured him to him now pushed her away. The final blow came during a charity gala. Richard arrived late, his tie loose, his eyes frantic. The room hushed as whispers followed him, rumors of bankruptcy, betrayal, collapse. One investor stood up and publicly withdrew his support. Others followed, and in that glittering ballroom, filled with chandeliers and champagne, Richard's empire died. I stood at his side, my hand resting gently on his arm, my smile unbroken. Inside, I savored the taste of victory. Within weeks, the mansion was seized, the cars repossessed, the servants dismissed. Richard begged me to stand by him. "Darling, you're my wife. We'll rebuild, together." I tilted my head and studied him. "Together?" I echoed. "Like you were with her?" His face drained of color. He realized I knew. And still, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply packed my belongings, what was truly mine, and left him to drown in the ruins he created. The mistress didn't stay long. When the money dried up, she vanished. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. The same streets where Richard had once found her waiting with empty hands now became the place he searched for her, desperate, clinging to the hope she still loved him. And when he found her, she laughed in his face. "You promised me the world," she sneered. "Now you can't even buy me dinner." And yet he still stayed by her side, because pride wouldn't let him come back to me. I could have left him there, broken and humiliated, but revenge tastes sweeter when it is complete. So I made sure he had nothing. I bought back properties under hidden companies, ensuring he couldn't touch them. I whispered into the ears of his former friends, ensuring doors stayed closed. And when he finally fell to the streets, clutching the hand of the very girl he betrayed me with, I was there to watch. It was a rainy evening when I saw him again. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement. People rushing past with umbrellas, their faces hidden in the blur of motion. And there he was, Richard, the man who once commanded boardrooms, who once dined with presidents and kings, now crouched on the corner of a busy street. His once perfect suit was tattered, his shoes worn down, his face gaunt with hunger. Beside him, the girl, his beautiful beggar mistress, sat with a paper cup, her makeup running in the rain. For a moment, I stood frozen, my breath caught between pity and triumph. Then I crossed the street. His eyes met mine. Shock, shame, a flicker of anger, and finally defeat. "Darling," he whispered, raising a trembling hand as if I might pull him back into the world he had lost. I stopped inches away, my umbrella shielding me from the rain. I looked down at him, not with love, not even with hate, but with a calm that frightened him more than either. "You look different," I said softly. "Not quite the billionaire anymore." The girl shifted uneasily, glaring at me. "Who are you?" she spat. I smiled faintly. "I'm the wife. The one who used to sit on the throne you thought you could steal."
Richard swallowed hard, his lips trembling. "It wasn't supposed to be like this.
I thought, you thought you were invincible, I interrupted. You thought you could betray me, waste everything we built, and walk away without consequence. He shook his head, raindrops clinging to his hair. Please, help me. I've lost everything. I leaned closer, my voice low, steady. No, Richard, you gave everything away. To her, to your pride, to your greed. I only made sure the world saw what you truly are. The beggar girl scoffed, tugging his arm. Don't listen to her. We don't need her. I turned my gaze on her, sharp as glass. You don't need me? You needed me the day you opened your hands for coins. You needed me when you thought stealing my husband would make you a queen. And now, you both need me more than ever, but I will give you nothing. People had started to notice. Passers-by slowed, whispering, their eyes darting between the three of us. Some recognized Richard, once the billionaire splashed across magazines, now begging in the rain. And I wanted him to feel it. The sting of shame, the burn of humiliation, the weight of being invisible and mocked all at once. I crouched so my eyes were level with his. Do you remember the night you told me I had everything and that it should be enough? I whispered. He nodded faintly, eyes wide. Well now, Richard, you have nothing. Is it enough? Tears mingled with the rain on his face. He lowered his gaze. He couldn't answer. For the first time, I felt no anger, only clarity. Revenge had been my fire, my fuel. It had carried me through betrayal, through nights of silence, through the careful planning of his ruin. But now, standing over him, I realized something profound. I was no longer bound to him. I had won, and in winning, I was free. The beggar girl clutched Richard's arm desperately, her beauty dimmed by despair. Tell her you'll come back. Tell her you don't need her money. Richard only shook his head, broken. And in that moment, she saw the truth too. He had nothing left to give her. She spat on the ground, threw the cup into the street, and stormed away, leaving him kneeling in the rain, abandoned by the very girl he sacrificed everything for. I stood tall, adjusting my umbrella. Goodbye, Richard, I said softly. May you finally understand the value of what you threw away. Not money, not power, but dignity, trust, love. He reached out one last time, his voice cracking. Please, just one more chance. I shook my head slowly. Chances are for men who stumble. You didn't stumble, Richard. You jumped. And with that, I turned and walked away. As I left him behind, the rain washing the city clean, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The mansion was gone, the empire dismantled, the husband destroyed, but I was alive. And more than alive, I was free. I rebuilt, not with diamonds or castles, but with dignity, with the quiet power of knowing I had survived the storm and emerged stronger. When I tell this story, people often ask me, was it worth it? Was revenge really sweet? And I smile, because revenge was never the point. The point was reclaiming myself, proving that I was not weak, not blind, not disposable. The point was that the man who once thought he owned me now kneels forgotten in the shadows of the world, and I walk in the light. So remember this, betrayal does not end you, it shapes you. And sometimes the sweetest justice is not in destroying the one who hurt you, but in watching them destroy themselves.